Yeah, but so, alright,
Loads of different companies, it's not just writers.
so we're interested by the
Oh,
book,
so there's going to be a mic.
We start because everyone's going to leave.
yeah, we're going to start real life right now.
Okay, we're live.
Come over here and you get recorded if you involve yourself.
And there were, okay. No, real life.
Okay.
So,
Can you tell people how to watch it on their phones?
yeah, but
Are there more technology gone up to this was?
Are you for?
alright.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, we are live right now, so we're going to start the debate.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce myself, maybe first would be a good start. So my name is Arthur Paris, I come from Trinity College, and the project we're going to do right now is called the Heliosphere. Why the Heliosphere? Because we want to create a live debate around throughout all the society to debate important topics about social media and technology. Basically today we went to the writer conference because we think that there is a big voice of the debate to see how technology can influence something that is like rooted to what defines us as human, writing things and telling stories. So maybe we can start by introducing the people around the table, and feel free at any time if you want to join the debate, just go there and we can hear you on the camera. Go there, just give your ID. For example, if I say something that you think is truly wrong, just come there and tell me I'm wrong and tell me why. It's basically an open debate, alright? So please, sir, can you introduce yourself?
My name is John O'Reilly.
And Jane Kelly.
Hello, I'm James Murray.
Jackie Downhouse.
Hi, I'm Mary Black.
I'm Glenda Chimino.
And it's me, Arthur Paris. I'm going to be the moderator then. Alright, so I had the feeling when I was talking to Mr. Lawrence O'Brien, who is in charge of organizing the conference, that there is loads of people who are writing but who are self-published. Meaning that you don't go through like the traditional company to publish your books, but you go through Amazon. I'm interested by the fact that it can be a good thing for diversity. Meaning that, for example, a traditional company could refuse one of your stories because it doesn't fit with the ideas they had of publishing books. For example, most of the things we can read in France in a big company which is called Hachette is about white old male, and they only publish things about this white old male stereotypes. So in what way, who are self-published, Amazon would help you to publish books and stories and increase diversity in the society then? Who wants to start?
I'll start with a statement, which is, you self-publish on Amazon. The problem is logarithms on Amazon and on any other tech platform are built by people. And we now find out there's inherent bias in lots of logarithms. So you can hope you'll search and get something reasonable, but we're finding an awful lot of bias in the logarithms. It's not going to change until more people that are different are involved in the design.
Alright, so you have an idea about algorithm, that's something in a way it can shrink your creativity and it doesn't help you to increase diversity, right? So who has?
I think there was a case of a university in the States where they found that the algorithm had figured out human bias and was introducing that bias into its the recruitment for students. So because there was a bias against female students or minority students that was there, it was actually replicating that bias. But I have a different problem with the media, and that's that it's very evanescent. It's not something that's going to be permanently preserved. I have a friend who's publishing he's self-publishing high bun books, and the reason he's doing this is because there's actually libraries that keep these as paper, hard physical copies. They keep them on acid-free paper so they can last for 300 years. And our technology is not going to last for 300 years. I'm old enough to remember floppy disk. I have floppy disk. I have no idea how to access that information. Every time technology changes, things disappear. And something that seems to be an improvement maybe wipes out something that you were using before, and we're just beginning to understand. I'm a Luddite at heart. I would like to go back and undo the Industrial Revolution, never mind the technology revolution, because I think it's very important to recognize that what we're putting on the internet is not permanent. Everything that's going up on the cloud, we don't know where that's going to go. The actual social media things, like we went from MySpace to Facebook to Instagram to God knows what's next, and things seem to just disappear. They just go into the ether somewhere. Or maybe that's because of my lack of awareness of how to track them. And I hate apps. I don't want to learn how to put all my stuff together. I don't like the surveillance involved in technology. Like, these things are not invented for us. As someone has said, if you aren't paying for something, you're the product. I don't want to be their product.
Thank you.
Right, so as the young person, I probably have the opposite argument. I would say that paper can rot away. It only lasts in 300 years. That's not a long time, to be honest. Whereas with data, data is data. It is stored in bits, and it can be exchanged or converted from one form to another far easier than by, you have to rewrite the whole thing paper to paper. You literally just use a program and switch it from, a .jpeg to a .imd, You just switch the file type, and there you go.
You've lost me already.
Yeah, well, that's something you can learn about online. Once again, advocating the internet, you can look all this stuff up, and it's stored in data, so you can, you can find ways of converting from one to the other using that system that's already there. It's a very efficient method, and it doesn't just disappear, it is still very much there. Now,
Floppy disk?
floppy disks, they're there, but the data on them is in a different form.
It's inaccessible.
Yeah, it's not inaccessible. It's not. You can still access it, People have online, information about how to read from a floppy disk. So if you really wanted to, you could, get something to read from a floppy disk, and you could convert it into whatever other form of data you want and use it that way. So it's not going anywhere. It's just, in fact, it's being stored better, in my opinion. So I have the opposite opinion. So, anyone wants to counteract that or whatever? Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. I think technology has given the writer so much more option to be heard, a wider audience. Social media helps so much with that. Yes, you have a lot of social media platforms, and you have to go with the flow. It's not going that fast. I mean, Facebook is still here. It's been here for a long time, since computers and the internet. Amazon is really doing well at the moment, but you have to look at the benefits, the pros and the cons. If you stay published without the internet, nobody's going to find your book because they don't know it exists. You have to get your book out there on the web, otherwise nobody's going to know it, nobody's going to buy it, and that's just such a shame, because your book is good. You put lots of love and effort into it, lots of money, obviously. It is a shame if you don't use it, because it's there, it's free. Why not? And you can learn about it online. There is YouTube, there are lots of people that will actually explain step by step how to do something. You name it, you go to the internet. The world is your oyster through the internet.
I agree to a degree with what's just been said, that it does help as a platform to get your book out there. But on the other hand, there's nothing better than going into a bookshop, having a browse, having a physical book in your hand, a page, turning the page as you read it. But it's just something. It's like, say, the only thing I think of comparing it to is like iTunes. If you've got iTunes, sure you can listen to us, but it's not like holding a CD or an album in your hand. And that seems to be kind of coming full circle now. The vinyl is making a comeback. So maybe somewhere along the line it'll go full circle again with the technology. if we get you know, a wider range maybe of I know bookshops are closing left, right and centre, but who knows, maybe that'll go full circle again.
It's not exclusive.
Yeah.
People are sure. Right. No, go on.
So what I would say to that is, to the feel of the whole thing, we're actually using technology to get that back, but in a more inclusive way. So with a bookshop, yeah, I personally love the feel of a page and everything as well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you can now translate that into, like, your brain reads in electric signals. So if you translate, you know, like with VR, you know, you can get these gloves now that translate the electric signals. So it's as if you're holding the physical object. So you get that same thing, but you can be in America and be visiting effectively a bookshop in Ireland and getting that same experience, you know? Technology is going that way. So you still get the feel, but it's more convenient as well. So, in my opinion, you know, that's what
You even get the swishy sound when you turn the page.
Yeah.
All of those books in the bookshop got there through technology. Lots of technology. Have you ever seen a blind person read?
Yes.
Okay, not just Braille, but you can actually program a computer face now to convert into Braille or to convert into audio sound. I mean, we're talking not just about authors, but about reaching people. I mean, technology has just transformed our world and transformed who can access our words. And the other thing I would say is on accountability as a writer. I don't need a buddy, because I got Scrivener and it tells me how many words I wrote that day. It reminds me. I've got all these tools and tricks that I use as a writer that help me. And finally, anyone who ever says they're a Luddite, I would say, I bet you're a heavy user of technology.
Can I please respond to that, since I said I was a Luddite? Oh, sorry, go ahead, you haven't spoken.
I come from a world of paper. Everything was done on paper and everything was done in triplicate. It was solid, it was there. You filed it away, you knew where it was, you knew how to get back to it when you needed it. As a writer, I have found that I'm using so much time getting to know technology and what it does and what it can do and how it can help me, that I've actually stopped writing because I'm so busy learning how to use technology that I no longer have the time to actually write. And so I find it's distracting, it's disturbing, it's frustrating, because when I need it to work for me most, invariably there's a crash or the internet doesn't work, and I've lost the precious time that I've given to it, and now I have lost that time, I can't reclaim that time, and I've lost other things that I could have been doing. And so I find it very frustrating and very annoying and very distracting.
I agree with the previous speaker. I'd also like to say that I gave a presentation here, and I was up at 3 or 4 in the morning trying to figure out converting my 2003 on my old Vista with a missing L computer to my new computer to get my presentation on that computer. And then I discovered that there was an incredibly complicated sequence in Windows 10. I do use technology in Windows 10 just for downloading into the USB. At 3:30 in the morning, I gave up and had to call for help. So can I just finish this point? Like, there's other. I'm very concerned also about the effects of our dependency on technology on our ways of relating to each other. One of the writers here gave an example of how she used to be inspired by listening to people's, overhearing people's conversations and writing them down. But people don't have conversations anymore. They're sitting there with their phones. You see a couple walking hand in hand. Each one is looking at their phone. We are becoming allied to technology in what I think is an unhealthy way. The eventual outcome of this would be cyborgs, and there are people who are in favor of that. I'm not one of them. The other point about technology is I have a lot of concern about virtual reality. I have a lot of concern about us going off into like illusory worlds and losing touch with the very nature and the earth that sustains us. We are moving more and more away from our physical connection with our seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, feeling, into abstractions of that, into something which is way beyond our natural human touch. Like nuclear power is an example where we've created something that we do not even have the ability to sense. We can't sense the danger. We weren't made to mess with that. And I think with virtual reality, we run into a problem of people becoming dissociated from reality and not even knowing what's real and what's virtual anymore. I'll just make one more quick point on this, and that is the fact that we are heading, according to the scientists and environmentalists, for like a kind of a crisis in 10 or 12 years. There are people who believe that though there's no technology now to solve it, that technology will come along to solve it. They're even saying that about continuing nuclear power plants. This is not really off the subject, because they want to build more even when there's still no technology to get rid of the waste. So what I feel about technology is we may well come to a point when we don't have electricity, when the actual civilization that we're used to depending on collapses. At the moment, there's 70 million displaced people in this world. There's people in India, in a big city, who don't have water to drink. I mean, we are living in catastrophic times, and I don't think we can assume that we can go on doing business as usual, creating technology which, if it comes to the crunch, and I'm living off grid, and I have nothing except a physical book and a computer that doesn't turn on, I'll take that physical book.
I want to say one scene that I saw to the lady who talked about loving books and paper. I saw a library burn. It was in Sarajevo during the war. The whole it was a catastrophe. The old library containing all the valuable manuscripts from that society was bombed. It was the most. It burned for days, and for days after, pages of burnt books rained down on that city, and I have one of them at home. I remember thinking, yes, I love the pages, but what I really love is what's in them.
Yes.
I'd like to bounce back on something you just said as well. Was the lady taking the inspiration from the conversation she was hearing. I can take the example of Twitter or Facebook or this new social media where people post their stories and conversation and discussions. Maybe it can be a new source of inspiration for people like you, people who write. It helps you as well, social media, since we're living in a more globalized world where like everyone, for example, I can read a story from someone coming from Syria, something that I would never be able to access before when the technology was not available. I'm wondering if it's something that can help you to empower your creativity and your writing, just listening to these like new social media stories and some things that you wouldn't have been able to access before.
I'm actually writing, just started to write a new trilogy about cultures that are disappearing. Young people don't want to adhere to the old ways of living, losing touch with nature, so to speak, because most old cultures are very much self-sustained from whatever is around them. So social media technology gives me the opportunity to bring this to a wide audience, to make this known. How would you know there are people in India not having water?
I can read a newspaper.
But how did they get the knowledge? So you cannot skip social media. You cannot say, I want to go back to before, because it will be just silly. There is so much knowledge out there now that we didn't know beforehand. Me Too is an example. So yeah, I am from the pre-computer age. I grew up without computers. I see my kids on the computer all the time. My son is learning Swedish because he found a mate online gaming and he's going to visit him. So it does not stop human interaction. So I think it's just great. So.
I accept what you said about the library burning down. When I see a library burning down, I physically cry.
Yes, I did.
because I hate to see all of that knowledge just turning into dust. So I do accept that technology needs to be there as a backup to encase all of that information. I just don't like to see us becoming totally dependent upon it. It's nice and it's good to have both, that we can refer to the paper and have it backed up on technology for research. I do use it myself for research. So I see the value of having both. I just don't like the dependence we have developed.
How many trees would you be prepared to kill to have all the knowledge we need in the world not digitized?
When did you stop beating your wife? Can I answer that, please?
Well, you haven't talked at all. Let him
I'm
talk.
sorry, but I'd like to answer that question.
We always.
You don't necessarily have to keep knocking down trees, you can recycle.
Good point.
There's also quite a lot of materials which could replace trees. Hemp, for example, is extremely valuable. You can make paper out of that. I've even seen in Scotland paper made out of rocks. Very smooth, lovely paper. So trees can be saved. What I wanted to say, obviously, Angelina is right that we need technology. I agree it should be more a backup than the main thing. Partly because we don't control in any way what is siphoned down to us by places like Facebook. I understand that only about 1 or 2% of your people ever actually see your post. You think you're putting it out to of your 500 friends, but most of them don't even know it's there unless they specifically look you up. The other thing about the technology, the point I wanted to make before, if I can remember it, I'm sorry. There's ways in which we are losing skills because we're developing new ones which are replacing the old ones. And I'll give just 2 quick examples of that. One is writing in cursive, handwriting. There are people who are not being taught that as children now, and that means there's all kinds of documents that they can't read anymore. So that's one example. Like I saw on television a letter written in cursive, and they were looking for someone who could read it. And they said, oh, we finally found someone. And I'm looking at the screen, and I can read every word of it. And I think, what is going on here? And the second thing is about surgeons, since we're interested in medicine here. I read that people who are becoming surgeons are losing some of the skills they actually need as surgeons because they're spending all their time like tapping on their phones, and they don't actually have the muscular coordination and experience. It's like someone who's never sewed. You know, there's skills that you need which are physical and skills which you need which are technical, and we shouldn't lose one to have the other.
Doctors.
No, I'm sorry, I just want to bounce back on what you just said. I think that technology has always accompanied us as humans in our growing and developing the civilization. For example, today, I'm able to do things that my grandparents are not able to do, but at the same time, I wouldn't be able to have a farm or grow fruits or this kind of things. I think that technology is always bringing new knowledge, but at the same time, you have to forget some if you want to have some other knowledge. It depends on how you judge the society, if it's going in the right way or the bad way. I don't know. Just the thing I know is that we're developing as a society, as civilization, and it's always been this thing. That's why we're not Homo sapiens anymore, we're developing towards some new conscious, towards just being able to be today around the table, 360 camera, and being able to talk about the writing process. It's part of civilization as well. We have to embrace it.
Okay, doctors. Because I am one. My niece is studying to be a surgeon, and she's studying anatomy virtually. She is practicing surgery using 3D techniques. And I know if I need my cataracts removed, I wish to have somebody doing it with a machine because the results are better. So I actually do not want to go back to a time when doctors learned from books, practiced on real patients, and did it all by hand. So, no. that is not what I want. And I think if you were having your eyes operated on you, wouldn't want it either.
You asked me about trees. Just like libraries, I don't want to see trees being knocked down either. So I go back to what I said. I don't want us depending upon technology. It's nice to have both.
Yeah, I'll just say that like technology is a catalyst for change and should be used that way, not as a block of change, you know? Technology, like, we're talking about replacing technology with higher levels of technology. There was once a time when there wasn't paper, right?
Yes.
That is technology.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a development. We are now developing further, right? So I'm sure when paper first came in, people were like, "What the hell is this? I don't like it. I'm not used to this." And you know, it takes time. And what technology, the speed it's going at now, allows us to do is it takes less time to adapt. That would be my point.
Okay. I sense a belief here in evolution of society toward progress, that every change is actually moving us toward progress. And I think, looking at the cyclical versions of society that we've experienced, that there are many things which would indicate that we are not progressing because we make changes. The word reform is often being used these days to indicate devastating reductions in people's well-being, for example, in the UK. And I think that there's a tendency, I think I better turn this off. There's a tendency to believe that we're getting better and better all the time. Now, it's such a mixture. Some things are getting better, some things are getting worse. I want to bring up 5G because I do feel this is relevant. This is a new technology which they want to bring in now to replace 4G. Everything's going to make everything faster and faster. Everything will be better, right? I saw a person being interviewed on the news, on television, technology, I agree, everything's technology, but she was being interviewed and she said that where 5G was being introduced, birds were falling out of the air, and maybe it would be worthwhile before this is introduced all over the world to sort of do a little testing and see if it's making birds fall out of the air, what effects is it having at the cellular level in our own human bodies. So I think that we give technology too much leeway for being a good thing. And we also don't look as much at the way that technology is being used to surveil and control us. I'm not being a conspiracy theorist here. You just have to look at China, where technology and algorithms are being used to control whether people can get a passport, they have to meet certain standards, and I have to hurry up.
No, it's not that we have to hurry up, just there will be 15 minutes left. So as I told you before when we first kick-started the talk, you can get closer because everyone seems really focused on the conversation. You can get closer and participate to the conversation if you have an idea. Just like come there, take the mic, and nobody will beat you, don't worry. But how to say it anyway. So I just want to focus back on the writing process and technology, right? There was something you said that was really interesting, is that social media and social networks can make you closer to your audience. But in a way, I'm highly interested by the way that your audience can, since your audience is closer, can it be pervasive and can they influence the way you're writing? Because you want to just, you want to write something that your audience will like. Do you have the impression it can condition you in your writing process?
I think it depends what you're writing. So there's a massive industry of people who write by logarithms. Their only intention is to get readers. It doesn't matter what they're saying, but they want a reader and they want clicks and they want to monetize it. So there's a purely commercial form of writing that has been created by the internet. So there's degrees of it. The stuff I write is helped because people write back and tell me if I've made mistakes. They add to it. I share a lot of things that I need to check with small groups. And I'm happy in this age. And I don't want to go back to the days of the Black Death when my life expectancy would be 32. I would not be able to read, if I was lucky, 32. And the only books were in monasteries, so I'm fine.
The way I use social media is to get closer to my readers. They get to know me, so when I bring out a new book, they are more inclined to buy it. So it's a win-win situation. I have a newsletter, so every 2 weeks I send out a letter. Hey guys, I'm still here, and I do polls. So I ask them, like, look, I want to write about this. How would you feel about that? I've got this cover. What do you think of it? Should I change something? So in that respect, they help me to write better. I do not write because I want to sell. I want clicks. I write what I like, and I find the audience that likes what I write, what I like to write. So we are like-minded, and social media helps me to find that with hashtags and the likes.
So would you name it a new way of writing? Something that is more inclusive, like a collective ways of writing? Like you're the writer of many peoples behind you?
Sorry, I don't know.
I mean, like, would you call it like a new way of writing? For example, there is loads of people behind you, and you're the hand that writes for them. Or you still have your inspiration, and you still have your own ideas, but they're just there to give you like the direction which you're going to.
Yes.
Right.
Thanks. Like I said, I do not write to get clicks. I like writing. I love writing, but I like to write something specific. I only ask them if I am unsure about something. So, but if I am very adamant that I want to use 2 genres in one book, which everybody says no, it's like, sorry, I like it. That's just me.
Okay.
Yeah, and from my point of view, I, to be honest, don't use social media all that often. Yeah, you're looking at me like, what? No, I don't. I use it as a way of, like, I only have Snapchat. That's the only social media thing I ever use. Right?
Explain it like for people in the audience.
Right. Yeah. So So Snapchat is basically it's text and also photo, and if you wish, small clips of video that you can send across the internet to other people. And for me, that's enough. You know, I have a video, a way of sending video. I have a way of sending photo, and I have a way of sending word. That's all I need, and I don't really use it. I use it as a way of keeping in contact. I live in the country, in the countryside, where I'm surrounded by farms, and you know, for people who live in a city where there's a lot of people, it's great to go and just, you know, walk, you know, 3 feet and talk to someone, you know, face to face. I can't really do that, so I have social media as a way of saying, hey, do you want to meet up? And then we go someplace and meet up, instead of just using it for...
In the writing process.
Yeah, bring it back to writing, obviously. Yeah, it's a way of people can discuss on it, right? So I have this idea, I send it to people, and you know, I get a general impression very fast of whether people would like it or not. And if you target that at the people you want to read your book, you get an idea very fast of whether an idea is going to work or not. So it can be, you know, very handy in terms of just, you know, a survey. It's a resource in many respects, you know. It's a way of getting opinions from people fast instead of whatever, if you want to use it for that.
So we're going to finish in 5 minutes, so one word from everyone around the table. All right.
Okay, just on the writing process, I'm thinking of the writing content. There are many plots that wouldn't work anymore because somebody will have a phone. They'll be able to contact someone when they're locked in that basement. There's so many ways that technology has changed our lives, and it's still changing it so rapidly that in some ways writing has to catch up. People writing science fiction have to write very fast because the scientific discoveries are becoming science fiction, is becoming reality very quickly.
I do agree with a lot of things that were said about technology, with particularly as regards writing and getting books out there. But before there was technology, books still became number one bestsellers. Maybe because they sold less and there was less competition. But on the technology side of things, as I said, I do agree it's, for want of a better way of putting it, maybe necessary evil. But I do think that people should not become dehumanised and actually have human face-to-face contact and interaction with other people because of technology.
I accept that technology is part of our world. It is something that is very helpful to us for reaching an audience and that. But I still feel that it's nice to have the two working side by side.
What I would say is that in terms of writing, you write based on what you're exposed to. And technology allows you to be exposed to a lot more. So, true, we are changing from what was once written to something new being written, but why is that a bad thing? And, you know, as shown by this debate, you know, it's a representation of two sides of society and whatever. We're writing about society, right? And technology is a change, right? Is it a good or a bad change, you said? Well, that's decided by society. So it's society deciding if society is good or bad. So, you know, a change is, in my opinion, a change. Whether it be, you know, good or bad is, you know, it will be reflected on differently at different stages. But a change is a change, and we should strive for change, is what I'd say.
Can I make a comment, please?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm George.
Nice to meet
I'd like to talk about technology. Referring about multimedia, the things that we need this change before the last 10 years, because we're waiting in our present time to talk with our friends, because we're working for 10 hours or more. But after 10 years, we have the issue that we want to talk with our friends, and we have the noise for another 100 people that I don't really know about them. So, the main issue currently is the noise and the history we will have in the following years from the books that we will have. So, in general, yes, we will cover the issue with the technology, and we will have loads of books back to cover in our libraries, and some of them will become our beloved books for the next year. So, it's easy going, we will cover.
Thank you. Thank you.
I actually read this the other day on social media, that if you have a lack of education, you create an ignorant society which creates a lot of hatred. Social media and being able to bring out your books internationally gives us writers an opportunity to bring out the voice of the minorities and get more acceptance and better human relationships.
I'm thinking of Genesis. So in the beginning was the Word. And of course we have sentences, commas, paragraphs, books and so on, but Genesis is never meant to be taken literally. It's an idea. So we call ourselves writers, but what we're really doing is moving ideas around and concepts and pictures and stories and images. And that's what it's all about. So we can talk about paper or phones or internet or technology or ethics or whatever. We're still writers. We're just in a new medium and in a new world. That's always been the case. And that's why Genesis survives. And we still read Genesis.
So we'll finish on this point. Thanks very much for your insights and for your patience and listening around as well. I hope that next time everyone will participate. I thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much.